At 11:47 p.m. on December 11, 2021, Lauren Smithfield sent her last text message. She was excited, maybe a little nervous, the way we all get before a first date that feels promising. The 23-year-old aspiring model had matched with someone on Bumble just 3 days earlier. Matthew LaFontaine, a 35-year-old financial advisor from Rhode Island. He was older, established, charming in his messages. Tonight, he was coming to her apartment in Bridgeport, Connecticut. By 6 a.m. the next morning, Lauren was dead. Have you ever swiped right on someone who seemed perfect? Someone whose profile made you think, maybe this could be something real? Lauren did exactly what millions of us do every day. She trusted a dating app match enough to invite them into her personal space. She even shared his profile with her brother for safety, because she was smart, careful, the kind of young woman who took precautions. But sometimes, being careful isn't enough. What happened in those crucial hours between Lauren's excitement and her lifeless body being discovered would expose a web of investigative failures, racial bias, and systemic neglect that continues to shock people 3 years later. Her mother, Chantel Fields, is now suing the city of Bridgeport for $60 million, claiming that if Lauren had been a white woman, the response would have been entirely different. This isn't just another dating app horror story, though it absolutely is that too. This is about a young black woman whose death was dismissed, whose family was ignored, and whose killer, if there is one, remains free. It's about how we value some lives over others, how we investigate some deaths more thoroughly than others, and how a mother's fight for justice became a battle against an entire system. Lauren Smithfields had nearly 1,000 Instagram followers who knew her as @such_a_lady. She had dreams of modeling in New York City, a close family who adored her, and a whole future ahead of her. What she didn't have was the protection she deserved, or the investigation her death demanded. If this story grips you like it gripped me, you're going to want to hear every detail of what happened that night, and more importantly, what didn't happen in the days and weeks that followed. Because Lauren's story isn't over, it's a fight that continues in courtrooms and on social media, a family's refusal to let their daughter become just another statistic. But before we get into the failures that followed, you need to know who Lauren really was. Because she was so much more than the headline that brought you here. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's whole world, an understanding that makes everything that happened next even more infuriating. Lauren Smithfields wasn't just a headline or a hashtag, she was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered. Born on January 23, 1998, Lauren was the baby of the family, the youngest of 3 siblings who grew up in Bridgeport's East Side. Her mother, Chantel Fields, worked tirelessly in local services, instilling in Lauren a fierce sense of self-worth and ambition. Her father, Everett Smith, provided steady guidance during family gatherings that always seemed to revolve around Lauren's infectious laughter. At 23, Lauren was building something real. Her Instagram account, @such_a_lady, had nearly 1,000 followers who tuned in for her modeling shots, makeup tutorials, and motivational posts about self-love. This wasn't just social media vanity, Lauren had legitimate dreams of walking runways in New York City. She curated her feed carefully, mixing glamorous photos with genuine moments of joy. Her style was impeccable, her confidence magnetic, and her engagement authentic. She understood that social media could be a stepping stone to bigger opportunities. But Lauren's real strength came from her family bonds. Her brothers, Lakeem Jeter and Tavar Graysmith, were fiercely protective of their little sister. They joined her for nights out, celebrated her small victories, and served as her sounding board when dating got complicated. Chantel was Lauren's biggest cheerleader, attending local fashion events where Lauren showcased her modeling talent. The extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, formed a tight support network that gathered for birthdays and milestones, with Lauren often at the center of the celebration. High school friends remembered Lauren as the life of the party, always quick with a joke or a hug. She had that rare ability to make everyone feel seen and valued. After graduating around 2016, she chose to pursue her passions directly rather than following the traditional college path. She worked part-time jobs in retail and hospitality to support herself, living independently in a modest apartment on Arctic Street. It was a source of pride for her, having her own space, her own car, her own carefully curated wardrobe. Lauren didn't have children, but she absolutely doted on her nieces and nephews, sharing playful photos and videos that showed her nurturing side. Her social media presence balanced glamour with genuine warmth. She'd post a stunning modeling shot in the morning and a silly video with family in the evening. When it came to dating, Lauren was both hopeful and realistic. She'd ended a casual relationship earlier that year, one that friends described as unfulfilling, and she was genuinely looking for something meaningful. She confided in her mother and siblings about the challenges of modern romance, the ghosting, the mismatched expectations, the occasional red flags that made her cautious. This caution wasn't paranoia, it was smart. Lauren understood the risks that came with dating apps, especially as a young black woman. She had a system. Share profiles with family, meet in public first when possible, trust her instincts. When she matched with Matthew LaFontaine on December 9, 2021, she followed her usual protocol. She showed his profile to her brother Lakeem, talked to her mom about her excitement, and approached the connection with her typical blend of optimism and awareness. Lauren was navigating her early 20s with grace, building a career in modeling and social media while maintaining deep family connections. She faced the same pressures many young women experience around beauty standards and safety, but she had a strong support system and clear goals. Her apartment was her sanctuary, decorated with photos of family and friends, evidence of a life full of love and possibility. At 23, Lauren Smithfields was just getting started. She had dreams to chase, family to love, and a whole future ahead of her. She was someone who took reasonable precautions without letting fear control her life. She believed in love, in opportunity, in the possibility that the right person might be just a swipe away. That belief, that beautiful openness to possibility, would tragically be her vulnerability when she encountered Matthew LaFontaine. December 9, 2021 started like any other day for Lauren, scrolling through Bumble matches while getting ready for work. That's when Matthew LaFontaine's profile caught her attention. At 35, he was 12 years older, established, financially stable, the kind of man who looked good on paper. His photos showed a well-dressed white man with an easy smile, and his bio listed his profession as a financial advisor from Rhode Island. For Lauren, this felt different from her usual matches. LaFontaine seemed serious, mature, someone looking for more than just a hookup. His age suggested he might be ready for something real, something meaningful. The racial dynamic wasn't lost on her. She'd dated across racial lines before, and while she was aware of the complexities, she didn't let it stop her from connecting with people who seemed genuine. Their initial messages sparked immediately. LaFontaine was charming, asking thoughtful questions about her modeling aspirations and complimenting her photos in ways that felt respectful rather than creepy. He seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her, not just her appearance. Lauren found herself looking forward to his messages, sharing details about her life and dreams that she usually kept private until she knew someone better. True to form, Lauren followed her safety protocols. She screenshot his profile and sent it to her brother Lakeem with a message that was equal parts excitement and caution. This one seems different, but you know the drill, keeping you posted. Lakeem had seen his sister navigate the dating world before, and he appreciated that she always kept family in the loop. It was their system, one that had served her well in previous relationships. The conversation evolved over those 3 days from December 9th to 11th. LaFontaine was consistent in his communication, not playing games or leaving her hanging like so many dating app matches do. He shared details about his work in finance, his life in Rhode Island, his interests and goals. Lauren reciprocated, talking about her modeling dreams, her close family, her hopes for the future. By December 11th, they'd moved from casual getting-to-know-you conversations to planning their first in-person meeting. LaFontaine suggested coming to her apartment in Bridgeport, and Lauren agreed. She was comfortable with the idea. They'd been talking for days, he seemed trustworthy, and she felt that familiar flutter of anticipation that comes with a promising connection. Have you ever felt that flutter of excitement before a first date? That mix of nerves and hope, wondering if this could be the person who changes everything? Lauren was experiencing exactly that as she prepared for LaFontaine's visit on December 11th. She spent extra time getting ready that evening, choosing her outfit carefully and making sure her apartment looked welcoming. She texted her girlfriends about her excitement, sharing that she had a good feeling about this one. Her messages to friends that day were filled with anticipation. She mentioned how different LaFontaine seemed from her usual matches, how mature and established he was. Lauren's last communications painted the picture of a young woman genuinely excited about romantic possibility. She wasn't naive or reckless, she was hopeful. She'd done everything right, vetted him through conversation, shared his information with family, trusted her instincts about his character. At 9:30 p.m. on December 11th, Matthew LaFontaine arrived at Lauren's Arctic Street apartment, carrying wine and what appeared to be genuine interest in the remarkable young woman who'd caught his attention 3 days earlier. Neither of them could have predicted that this would be Lauren's final night alive. At exactly 9:30 p.m. on December 11th, 2021, Matthew LaFontaine knocked on the door of Lauren's Arctic Street apartment. She opened it with that same bright smile her family knew so well, welcoming him into the space she'd worked so hard to make her own. He brought wine, a detail that would later become crucial, and they settled in for what Lauren hoped would be the beginning of something special. According to LaFontaine's account to police, the evening unfolded naturally. They talked, getting to know each other face to face after 3 days of digital conversation. Lauren showed him around her modest apartment, perhaps pointing out photos of family and friends, sharing stories about her modeling aspirations. They opened the wine and continued their connection over drinks. As the night progressed, their interaction became more intimate. LaFontaine later told investigators that they had consensual sex, a claim supported by physical evidence found at the scene. He described Lauren as willing and engaged, participating fully in their encounter. According to his timeline, they consumed alcohol throughout the evening, talking and laughing as new couples do when everything feels promising. By LaFontaine's account, exhaustion overtook them around midnight. They went to bed together, two people who just hours earlier had been excited about exploring a new connection. Lauren, who had started the day with such hope, fell asleep next to a man she barely knew but had chosen to trust. What happened in those dark hours between midnight and dawn remains a mystery that haunts everyone who loved Lauren. LaFontaine claims he slept soundly until approximately 6 a.m. on December 12th. When he woke, he found Lauren beside him, but something was terribly wrong. Her skin was cold to the touch, her lips had turned blue, and she was completely unresponsive. The vibrant young woman who had welcomed him with such warmth just hours earlier was gone. According to his statement, LaFontaine immediately began performing CPR, desperately trying to revive her. He claimed he worked frantically, breathing into her lungs and pressing on her chest, hoping to bring back the life that had already left her body. But Lauren remained still, her dreams and future extinguished. Here's where the timeline becomes deeply troubling. Despite finding Lauren unresponsive at 6 a.m., LaFontaine didn't call 911 until 8:56 a.m., nearly 3 hours later. 3 hours. Let that sink in for a moment. If someone you cared about was unconscious and unresponsive, how long would it take you to call for help? Minutes? Seconds? What was Matthew LaFontaine doing during those missing hours? When paramedics finally arrived at 9:30 a.m., they found Lauren's apartment in disarray. Broken glass scattered across the floor, wine spilled on surfaces, signs of a struggle or at minimum a chaotic evening. They also discovered something that would later contradict LaFontaine's initial statements to police: a used condom on the floor, clear evidence of the sexual encounter he had initially denied. But by the time first responders reached Lauren, there was nothing they could do. She was pronounced dead at the scene, her body already showing the telltale signs of someone who had been gone for hours. LaFontaine had left a handwritten note on the apartment door that read, "Call this number if looking for Lauren." It was his phone number, a strange detail that would later raise questions about his state of mind and his understanding of the situation's gravity. Even more bizarre, LaFontaine left the scene before police arrived. He claimed he had to get to work, as if the death of the woman he'd spent the night with was just an inconvenient scheduling conflict. This wasn't the behavior of a distraught lover or even a concerned acquaintance, it was the behavior of someone trying to distance himself from a crime scene. When officers finally entered Lauren's apartment around 9:30 a.m., they found her body in bed, dressed only in a shirt, with no obvious signs of external trauma. The scene looked like a possible overdose, not a homicide, and that initial impression would shape everything that followed. But here's where this story takes a disturbing turn that goes far beyond one tragic night. The police response to Lauren Smithfield's death would reveal systemic failures that shocked even experienced observers of law enforcement misconduct. Because while Lauren lay dead in her apartment, the people who were supposed to seek justice for her were already failing her in ways that would compound her family's grief and raise questions that persist to this day. The investigation, if you can even call it that, was about to begin. What happened next would shock anyone who believes in basic human decency and professional police work. The Bridgeport Police Department's response to Lauren Smithfield's death wasn't just inadequate, it was a masterclass in how not to handle a suspicious death, especially when the victim is a young black woman. First, let's talk about what didn't happen at Lauren's apartment. No crime scene tape was put up. None. Despite finding a young woman dead after a date with a stranger, despite the broken glass and disarray, despite clear signs that something had gone terribly wrong, officers treated this like a routine overdose case. They walked through Lauren's home, the place where she'd built her independent life, and saw nothing worth preserving or investigating. This wasn't protocol. This was negligence. But the failures were just beginning. While police were casually processing what they assumed was a simple drug death, Lauren's family had no idea their daughter and sister was gone. Think about that for a moment. Lauren Smithfields died on December 12, 2021. Her family, the people who loved her most, who had raised her, supported her dreams, and worried about her safety, learned about her death from her landlord. Not from police. From her landlord. Chantel Fields, Lauren's mother, received a call telling her that her daughter was dead, that there was a note on the door with some man's phone number, and that she needed to come identify the body. This devastated mother rushed to her daughter's apartment, only to be initially turned away by officers who seemed inconvenienced by her presence. When Chantel was finally allowed information about her daughter's death, the notification was cold, dismissive, almost cruel in its brevity. No compassion, no explanation, no acknowledgement that this woman had just lost her child. The delay wasn't hours, it was more than 24 hours before Lauren's family received proper notification of her death. In any competent police department, family notification happens immediately. It's treated as a priority, handled with care and sensitivity. But not for Lauren Smithfields. Not in Bridgeport. Meanwhile, Matthew LaFontaine was questioned but never arrested. Police took his statement about the evening, accepted his version of events, and let him walk free. Yes, he took polygraph tests, but polygraphs aren't admissible in court and have been proven unreliable countless times. The man who was the last person to see Lauren alive, who delayed calling 911 for 3 hours, who left a cryptic note and departed before police arrived, was treated like a witness rather than a suspect. When toxicology results came back on January 25, 2022, they revealed the cocktail that killed Lauren: fentanyl, promethazine, hydroxyzine, and alcohol. This wasn't a recreational overdose, this was a dangerous combination of substances that could easily be lethal. The key question was obvious: where did these drugs come from? Lauren's family insisted she wasn't a heavy drug user, certainly not someone who would knowingly take fentanyl. But instead of investigating the source of these substances, instead of pressing LaFontaine about whether he provided drugs, police accepted the accidental overdose ruling and prepared to close the case. Remember those contradictions I mentioned? LaFontaine initially told police he didn't have sex with Lauren. But investigators found a used condom at the scene. When confronted with this evidence, he changed his story to admit they'd been intimate. This is a classic sign of deception, changing your story when physical evidence contradicts your initial lie, but police didn't seem to care. The lead detectives on Lauren's case were Angel Llanos and Kevin Cronin. These men, who were supposed to seek justice for a young woman who died under suspicious circumstances, instead treated her family like nuisances. When Chantel Fields called repeatedly asking for updates on her daughter's case, seeking basic information about the investigation, Detective Cronin's response was beyond heartless. He told a grieving mother to stop calling. Stop calling about your daughter's death. Stop asking questions about the investigation. Stop demanding answers about how your child died. Can you imagine being told to stop calling about your child's death? Can you fathom the cruelty of that response? Chantel Fields had just lost her youngest daughter under mysterious circumstances, and the detective assigned to find answers told her to stop bothering him. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was inhumane. The dismissive attitude extended beyond phone calls. When the family asked about evidence collection, about interviewing witnesses, about following up on LaFontaine's inconsistent statements, they were met with bureaucratic stonewalling. Police seemed determined to classify Lauren's death as an accidental overdose and move on, regardless of the unanswered questions. No fingerprints were collected from LaFontaine's belongings. No thorough search of his possessions was conducted. No effort was made to trace where the lethal drugs originated. The investigation was so superficial it barely deserved the name. But Chantel Fields wasn't going to let her daughter become another statistic. She wasn't going to accept that Lauren's life mattered so little that her death didn't warrant a real investigation. And when a mother's love meets institutional indifference, something powerful happens. The fight for justice was about to begin. When institutional power fails, sometimes it takes the collective voice of ordinary people to demand what should have been given from the start: basic human dignity and competent police work. That's exactly what happened when Lauren's story exploded across social media platforms in early January 2022. It started with Lauren's family sharing their frustration on Facebook and Instagram. Chantel Fields posted about the dismissive treatment they'd received, the delayed notification, the lack of investigation. She shared photos of Lauren, not crime scene images, but pictures of her daughter's beautiful smile, her modeling shots, her family moments. The posts were raw, honest, and heartbreaking. Within days, #JusticeForLauren began trending. People across the country were sharing Lauren's story, expressing outrage at how she'd been treated in death. TikTok users created videos explaining the case details, Instagram stories spread awareness, and Twitter threads broke down exactly what had gone wrong with the investigation. But the moment that truly changed everything came when Cardi B, with her millions of followers, shared Lauren's story. The rap superstar didn't just repost, she demanded answers, calling out the Bridgeport Police Department by name and asking her massive platform why a young black woman's death wasn't being taken seriously. Cardi B's involvement brought national attention that police could no longer ignore. The power of celebrity amplification cannot be overstated. Suddenly, news outlets were picking up the story, journalists were calling Bridgeport PD for comment, and national conversations about racial bias in police investigations were centering on Lauren Smith Fields. By mid-January 2022, the pressure had become impossible to ignore. Hundreds of protesters gathered in Bridgeport, marching through the streets where Lauren had lived and died. They carried signs with her photo, chanted her name, and demanded accountability from city officials. These weren't professional activists or paid protesters, these were community members, other young black women, mothers who saw themselves in Chantel Fields' grief. The protests were peaceful but powerful. Speakers shared their own experiences of being dismissed by police, of having their concerns minimized because of their race. Lauren's story had become a symbol of something much larger, the systematic devaluation of black women's lives. But the most shocking revelation came when activists discovered that Lauren wasn't alone. On the exact same day Lauren died, December 12, 2021, another black woman named Brenda Lee Rawls had also been found dead under suspicious circumstances in Bridgeport. And guess what? Her family had received the exact same dismissive treatment from the exact same detectives. Two black women, dead on the same day, both cases mishandled by the same officers. This wasn't coincidence, this was a pattern. The parallel between Lauren and Brenda's cases made the systemic nature of the problem undeniable. Both families had been treated with the same callousness, both investigations had been botched in similar ways, both women had been failed by the same system. Public pressure finally forced action. On January 27, 2022, more than 6 weeks after Lauren's death, Bridgeport police announced they were opening a criminal investigation into the factors leading to her death. It was a victory, but a bittersweet one. Why had it taken a social media campaign and celebrity involvement to get basic police work done? The consequences for the officers involved came swift and overdue. Detectives Angel Llanos and Kevin Cronin were placed on administrative leave for their mishandling of both Lauren's and Brenda's death notifications. Later, Cronin was eventually reinstated after arbitration, but Llanos resigned amid the scrutiny. Community support for the family went beyond hashtags and protests. A GoFundMe campaign established to help with funeral costs and legal expenses raised over $100,000, showing how deeply Lauren's story had resonated with people across the country. Donors left messages of support, sharing their own stories of loss and their commitment to seeing justice served. The money represented more than financial support, it was a demonstration that Lauren's life mattered to thousands of strangers who had never met her but refused to let her death be swept under the rug. What started as one family's grief had become a movement demanding systemic change. By December 2023, 2 years after Lauren's death, it became clear that justice through the criminal system wasn't coming. So Chantel Fields did what any mother fighting an entire system would do, she took them to federal court. The lawsuit she filed seeks $60 million in damages against the city of Bridgeport, 5 police officers, and even Bumble itself. $60 million isn't just a number pulled from thin air. It's a statement about the value of Lauren's life, the cost of systemic failure, and the price of institutional racism. The lawsuit alleges federal civil rights violations, claiming that Lauren's race directly influenced how her death was investigated, or rather, how it wasn't investigated. The legal documents paint a devastating picture of what civil rights attorney Darnell Crossland calls a pseudo-investigation. The suit argues that if Lauren had been a young white woman found dead after a Bumble date, the response would have been completely different. Crime scene tape would have gone up immediately. The family would have been notified within hours. Every piece of evidence would have been collected and analyzed. Matthew LaFontaine would have been treated as a suspect, not a witness. This is missing white woman syndrome, in reverse, the phenomenon where cases involving white victims receive disproportionate media attention and police resources, while black and brown victims are dismissed or ignored. Lauren's case perfectly illustrates how this bias plays out in real investigations, with deadly consequences for justice. As of September 2025, nearly 4 years after Lauren's death, her case remains officially open but practically stalled. No charges have ever been filed against Matthew LaFontaine, despite the suspicious circumstances, the inconsistent statements, and the 3-hour delay in calling for help. He continues to live freely while Lauren's family fights for answers he could provide. The criminal investigation that was opened in January 2022 after public pressure has yielded no arrests, no new evidence collection, and no clear progress. It exists on paper but seems inactive in practice, leaving the family with more questions than answers. But Lauren's brothers, Lakeem Jeter and Tavar Graysmith, refused to let their sister's death be meaningless. They established a foundation in Lauren's name focused on dating safety awareness, particularly for young women using apps like Bumble and Tinder. Their work includes educational programs about recognizing red flags, safety protocols for first dates, and advocating for better platform protections. Speaking of Bumble, the dating app's cooperation in Lauren's case has been disappointingly minimal. The company provided basic data only after intense public pressure and legal demands, but hasn't implemented significant safety changes or taken responsibility for their platform's role in facilitating dangerous encounters. The lawsuit names Bumble as a defendant, arguing they have a duty to protect users from foreseeable harm. The federal lawsuit continues to move through the courts, with discovery revealing internal police emails that show officers dismissed Lauren's case almost immediately based on assumptions about her race and lifestyle. These documents provide smoking gun evidence of the bias her family always suspected. Attorney Darnell Crossland remains convinced that Lauren was murdered, pointing to the forensic inconsistencies, LaFontaine's behavior, and the rushed classification as accidental overdose. He's fighting not just for monetary damages, but for the truth about what happened in that apartment on December 12, 2021. The battle for Lauren Smithfield's continues in courtrooms and communities across the country. Lauren Smithfield's story isn't just a tragic headline from 2021, it's a stark warning that resonates louder than ever in 2025, as dating apps continue to shape how we connect, and systemic biases persist in our justice system. At its core, this case exposes vulnerabilities that could affect anyone, but particularly young women of color navigating modern romance and institutional indifference. Let's break down what we can learn and how we can turn grief into action. First, dating app safety protocols must evolve beyond basic tips. Lauren took precautions, sharing LaFontaine's profile with her brother Lakeem, texting friends about her plans, but it wasn't enough. Apps like Bumble have implemented features like photo verification and emergency check-ins since her death, but users need to demand more: mandatory background checks for premium features, AI monitoring for suspicious patterns, and partnerships with safety organizations. On a personal level, always meet in public first, use location-sharing apps, and trust your instincts if something feels off. Lauren's excitement for a simple date turned deadly. Her story reminds us that virtual connections carry real-world risks. Share your location, have a check-in plan, and never hesitate to walk away. Second, recognizing investigative bias is crucial. The Bridgeport Police Department's handling, treating Lauren's death as an overdose without securing the scene, delaying family notification, and dismissing Chantel's calls, highlights missing white woman syndrome in reverse. Black women's cases often receive less media attention and resources, leading to rushed conclusions and overlooked evidence. As of September 2025, the criminal probe remains open with no charges against LaFontaine, underscoring how racial and gender biases can stall justice. We must advocate for mandatory bias training in law enforcement, independent oversight boards, and protocols ensuring every death is investigated thoroughly, regardless of demographics. The importance of family advocacy shines through in Chantel Fields' relentless fight. From launching #JusticeForLauren on social media to filing a $60 million lawsuit in December 2023 alleging civil rights violations, her efforts forced a criminal investigation and placed detectives on leave. Without her persistence, amplified by Cardi B and public protests, the case might have faded. This teaches us that families aren't powerless. By organizing vigils, starting GoFundMe's, which raised over $100,000 for Lauren's, and partnering with attorneys like Darnell Crossland, they can pressure systems to act. If you're in a similar situation, document everything, seek legal aid, and build community support. Cases like Lauren's expose deeper systemic problems: underfunded police departments, lack of transparency in death investigations, and the opioid crisis intersecting with personal vulnerabilities. The parallel with Brenda Lee Rawls's mishandled case on the same day reveals patterns of neglect toward black victims in Bridgeport. These aren't isolated, they reflect national issues where fentanyl-laced substances claim lives amid inadequate responses. Lauren's lasting legacy endures through her family's work. Her brothers founded a foundation promoting dating safety and awareness, turning personal loss into communal protection. Lauren, the aspiring model with the infectious smile, dreamed of influencing the world. Now, she does, by inspiring reforms and conversations about equity. Lauren's story isn't over, it's a call for all of us to demand better, safer apps, unbiased investigations, and amplified voices for the marginalized. If this moved you, share it, support similar causes, and let's ensure no more families endure this pain.